what I'm going to do is jump back over to Podaris here. I'm going to select from the library PTAL. And what that will do is pull up the settings pane here that you can see on the left-hand side. And so it lets me set things like names and descriptions that can be used when I share this, perhaps interactively with colleagues or stakeholders. But stepping through some of the more interesting options, what you first have to do is select the network that you want to use. So in this case, I want to use the Exeter public transport network. And this is just the base network that includes all of the public transport services, the bus and the rail services. The next thing that I need to do is configure a few of these other settings. For each of these, Podaris gives you tooltips that explain what the parameters mean. All the defaults are set up with industry standard sensible ones. So these are based on Transport for London's defaults and guidance. And what I need to do is select the zones for this. And here I could either select a GIS data set of zones that I already have, or I can use Podaris to generate a set of zones for me. And so in this case, what I want to do is just measure the public transport accessibility for perhaps a 500-meter square grid for Exeter. And so what I've done here is just draw a polygon. That's then allowed me to set up what type of grid that I want. I'm going to select a square one with 500-meter spacing between it. And Podaris will go ahead and generate that for me. What that means is that each of those cells there, the square cells, will get a score for its public transport accessibility level. And that we can then use to understand individual scores, but also as a whole, start to get some of those outputs. And of course, you might want to have a custom data set that you use throughout your projects, and you can always select those instead. But for now, we'll just go with this for a simple demo. The next options are related to what time period you want to measure the accessibility level at. So at this point, we're looking at a Monday morning AM peak. So Monday between 8:15 and 9:15. You could look at the Saturday evening service if you wanted. There are a whole host of other parameters that you can configure, such as walking speed, the different reliability scores for all of the different modes that you want to consider. In this case, Exeter has bus and rail services. Things like the maximum walking distance that you would consider the average person able to walk. These are all things that you can choose to control. I'm just going to stick with the defaults now, which match TfL's defaults in London, and click Run. And what this will do then is bunch up all of that data, send it off, and run this all on our server-side calculations. As we can see, the PTAL scores for Exeter have loaded there. Obviously, I selected quite a small area, but looking at the city centre, the way that PTAL works is it takes the scores, which you can see on the left-hand side. This is a distribution of all the scores in the project from 0 to around 30 here. And then it categorizes them into different levels, with A1 being the worst, that's the dark blue that you see, and 6B being the best. As you'd expect for somewhere like Exeter, the city centre, which is also where the rail stations are, have the highest score, that's a 6A. And as you get further out, it gets lower. What Podaris has done is group those into nice ISO bands that you could also view the original square grids that we created here. All of these parameters can be tweaked, so you can change things like the display, the color, the classes. We obviously work with a lot of different geographic areas, and applying TfL's defaults score levels to very rural places doesn't always give the nicest picture of accessibility, or at least one that's fair. So perhaps you might want to choose different levels and adjust these bands to give a fairer picture for what you consider accessibility to be in your area. So just by tweaking the classes here, you can very quickly build up your own custom scores and levels. And then once you're happy with this, you can share it either interactively as a link to any stakeholders, or you can export all of these in common formats like GIS, spreadsheets, and high-resolution images. So what we're trying to do with Podaris Insight is give you sensible defaults that mean that you can get results like this within minutes and have really nice presentational styles and export formats so that they are almost report ready to just reduce the time that you need to build up these pictures. Of course, if you want to go deeper and you want to tweak things deeper, all of the raw data is there and you can control it as you see fit. But for something like Exeter, Obviously, it's PTAL is a helpful measure, but it shows you probably what you already expect, that accessibility to the town centre, the accessibility score in the urban centre is very high.